bring to your attention the viability, the significance, the purpose of the dialogical encounter and engagement.
It's amazing to see people come together. We're talking about climate justice, homelessness, anything actually they really want to talk about. I'm hearing conversations about food shortage. We're hearing conversations about civic engagement and governance in LA. And so we're covering a broad range of topics, and it's really interesting to hear what everyone's talking about today. Really grateful to be part of this process.
I came out because Days of Dialogue is critically important to me, and we at KBLA Talk 1580 have been humbled and honored to be a partner in this journey for the extent of time that we've been around, at least. But we live in the most multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic Los Angeles ever. And yet, to my mind, racism still remains the most intractable issue in this city. And so I see the work that Avis Ridley Thomas and Mark Ridley Thomas and others are doing as trying to elevate these conversations higher on the agenda for Los Angeles. And to the extent we can be supportive of that at KBLA Talk 1080, we are honored to do so.
It's important that we engage in dialogue as a matter of civility. And you know what? Dialogue assumes differences. And yet we can sit down and do what we need to do and leave this place having been educated by each other. So this is the Institute for Nonviolence in Los Angeles hosting Days of Dialogue.
Thank you for that. I wanted to share a little bit about...
We have about 6 commutations in there
Still playing?
where we're doing further research. Nice to see you again.
It's Trump, right? Ew! So if that wasn't appropriate, I don't know what is. So again, my name is Ann Sawyer. You know, I've been working with Days of Dialogue, and we really have made a concerted effort to put together a really stellar team this year focused on how can we expand and continue to connect and reach these communities. This year was exciting for us because we were able to launch a new website. We're looking at resources. I would like to just take a moment to acknowledge our core leadership team. So Sharon, Brett, if you don't mind, will you guys stand up? And for any, yes, thank you. These, every week, if there's anybody else here that I'm not seeing, please stand up. Without everybody doing the work that they're doing, we could not deploy the way that we're able to deploy these days. So in addition to the website, we're looking at resources. We've released toolboxes up there. We have our guides up on the website. So I recommend if you have interest after the session today to please go on the website and check out what we have on there. In particular, we just launched a trauma facilitator toolbox, which is really a great wealth of information. We also have upcoming information on our events, as well as opportunities for facilitators. We're always looking for incredible facilitators. I will say we have already a pretty stellar team. I'm very humbled that I get to work with these people as much as I do because they're truly amazing and I learn from them every single day. I do want to take a moment to ask the facilitators in the room to please stand up, the Days of Dialogue facilitators. If you don't mind, or raise your hand, please. I know, I see you all here. So these facilitators are out there all the time on a moment's notice, whether it's online or in person. And if you have questions, again, throughout the session today or after about scheduling a dialogue or even how the facilitators are doing their work, by all means, reach out to them and talk to them. They're incredible and they go out there and they really do the hard work. What to expect today? We're not going to do a dialogue. We need more time. We certainly have a lot to talk about, right? Our point today is hopefully to give you a couple tools and a call to action. You heard the messaging this morning. We need dialogue. We all need it. I need it. Every moment of what we heard this morning was, I said, like an antibiotic to me. It's imperative we get together. It's imperative we talk. It's imperative we hear each other's stories. We hear each other's voices. It's imperative we connect with the kids. And you'll hear a little bit about the kids in our conversations today too. So we hope to give you some tools, but really you're here today because we want you to take action. We want you to help us put these community conversations together. How does that look? I don't know. I don't care. We're here to help you and meet you where you're at to do that. We have an incredible team that works every week and is prepared. And if we're not, we'll get prepared. So I can tell you comfortably that we're ready. If you have a community to bring us to, then let's by all means do it. I'm gonna just let everybody get into the space. Welcome. There's still some chairs over here, you guys, if you wanna come in. I know. So really quick, I wanna introduce our panel, and actually, Mr. Ridley Thomas, would you like to come up and say hello to the group? No, you good? Hi. Huge supporter. I don't know what we would do without MRT. So the other thing that I really wanted to bring to the table today was just some guidance from experts. And I see many experts in this room. I have a panel right here of 2 people who are just incredible. And I want to introduce both of them. I'll start with Cheryl. Cheryl is basically an incredibly seasoned conflict resolution expert. She has extensive experience in community dialogue and mediation. She is the current executive director of Kids Managing Conflict, which is the organization I'm a president of. So we work hand in hand both in Days of Dialogue and KMC pretty much every day. She has facilitated dialogues with LAPD Police Academy recruits, convened Leaning In Dialogue series during the pandemic. We did a lot of dialogues during the pandemic. During on race and equity issues. Her work extends to improving police-community relations through listening with students and communities nationwide. And she is working nationwide. She gets calls from across the United States. She is a retired child welfare administrator with 27 years of service, and now has her master's in dispute resolution from Pepperdine. An incredible resource, this woman right here, and you'll hear from her and you'll understand why I say that. Secondly, I have basically, my mentor, my teacher, Ken Cloak, and he was the first person that came to mind when we were talking about putting this together. And in lieu of a dialogue, what could we talk about? And originally, the conversation was around the political climate. Now we have collective trauma. So we know we've got people that are hurting and pain and need spaces to talk to each other and connect and feel like they're not alone in the processes that they're going through. So as we've been talking and planning the session, we did revisit in light of the fact that there is a lot going on within our community. Ken Cloak, if you don't know him, please look him up. There's lots of videos, but you get to hear him, and I'm gonna be quiet and turn it to Cheryl and Ken shortly here. Globally renowned mediator, facilitator, and thought leader in conflict resolution. He has decades of experience helping individuals and groups through complex and high-stakes conversations. His approach emphasizes dialogue over debate, uncovering the root causes, and fostering understanding even amidst our deep differences. Known for his calm presence, trauma-informed methods, and commitment to equity, Ken reframes conflict as an opportunity for growth and transformation. His expertise and compassionate guidance make him uniquely suited to help us navigate these most challenging conversations. So without further ado, I'm gonna turn it to Cheryl Epps first, and then we're gonna hopefully get as much time with Ken Cloak for all of us as possible today, and you'll understand. Thank you.
Yeah. a little. Good morning, afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ann. I'm Cheryl Epps, and I'm the Executive Director for Kids Managing Conflict, where we teach elementary, middle school, and high school students about conflict resolution and basic mediation skills and strategies. This is exceptionally important given the current climate, the current culture, and everything else that's happening. So it's nice to be able to train our youth how to handle some of their own conflicts and do it in a way that they can relate to each other, hear each other much better than they would from an adult. It's something to see an 8-year-old taking 2 chairs out at recess on the playground and mediating conflict between their peers. It's effective. We mediate issues anywhere from bullying to dating issues with some of the high school students, gossiping, teasing, everything in between, racially charged incidents, cultural differences. Our students learn how to navigate through conflict with each other and work out their differences that way. This is something that's happening not just here in California, but it's happening nationally and even internationally. We've recently been talking to Beijing about helping them start up a peer mediation program there. So it's not a concept that's very new. It's something that's been happening for a while. But what I've learned is that this isn't happening much in our Black and brown communities. So recently, within the last couple of years, we've been intentional about reaching out to our underserved communities, schools where they didn't even know about peer mediation and what it was, which is important because one of the challenges is that our kids of color are usually the ones that are suspended first. They're expelled first. They're the first ones targeted for that school to prison pipeline. And so this way, I like to call them superpowers. We teach these superpowers to our kids and teach them how to interact with each other. We teach them how to take these skills into adulthood on their jobs so that they can learn how to work well with each other, how to work with authority figures, and even beyond that. We had one student who started out in our peer mediation program, middle school, who went on to get his master's. He became a teacher and started his own peer mediation program. So this is ongoing, it's effective. I can't speak about it enough. One of the other things so that's what we do about peer mediation. We recently acquired, for example, KIPP Academy of Opportunity, which is located at Manchester and Figueroa. We also recently acquired Hillcrest Elementary School, which is in Los Angeles. This year, we are talking with schools outside of California, Charlottesville, Virginia, who heard about us and they're interested in us training their students there. We would love to do all of that, but funding is an issue. So like any nonprofit, we thrive and work well off of donations that are graciously given by various benefactors. And that's my shameless plug. If for some reason you feel inclined, there's certainly a way that you can definitely support our programs. One of the other efforts that I work with is, as Ann mentioned, we work with LAPD, where we train LAPD sergeants and detectives along with community members on basic mediation and de-escalation strategies. Now, why is that important? That's important because LAPD has a long-standing history of not necessarily engaging the community in the best way. So we want to try to bring them together. They do role plays together. Community members play officers, officers play community members, and then we break down and have small group dialogues. I do have to say my 84-year-old mother and her best friend in the rear of the room, they both completed the mediation program. So if they can do it, all of you can do it. I have information, but I don't want to take up too much time on that. If you're interested in possibly participating in this type of training, we have a class coming up February 6th and 7th. One day we'll be at Pepperdine University, provided everything works well with Pepperdine on the way there and back. The other day will be at Holman Methodist. I'm happy to stay behind and talk with either of you. If you're interested, give me your name and number. I'm happy to give you the Google Doc where you can register to participate in that training and go over the details later. I encourage you to do it because your community needs representation from you. The officers need to hear what's important to you. How do we rebuild trust? How do we repair what's been fractured from before? And working in this program will help to at least start on the pathway to healing and restoration within the community and policing agencies. I see your hand in the back. I'll be happy to tell you all of that as soon as we're done. So please find me afterwards and I can give you my card and we can follow up after that. I just want to make sure I get through a couple of points. Sure, actually I'm going to pass you my card and then you and I can make a point to catch up. Ooh.
It's kids managing conflict.
Kids managing conflict. And it looks like I'm sitting up as well because my chair just broke. Okay, so really quick, I just want to go over a couple of the other efforts. One of the things they talked about in the plenary session today was, and I have more cards here, was civic engagement and what that looks like. So far I've mentioned having our youth trained through Kids Managing Conflict. That's one way. The other way is by having our police and community mediation. I have some others here. Please pass this around. And another way is by dialogues, which was mentioned earlier through Days of Dialogue. So I serve as one of the other facilitators with that program, working with an exceptional team of fellow facilitators that you've seen here in this room. And what we do, we hold dialogues about anything from racism, bigotry, the George Floyd killing, homelessness, mental health awareness, everything in between. We have these dialogues because it brings the community together. We get a chance to talk about resources that are available in your community. We also talk about what's needed. We also talk about what's recommended. And we do this with different organizations, the YWCA, for example. We talked and connected on through dialogue with universities, HBCUs located out of state. So there's a connection, thank goodness for the virtual environment, that allows for us to engage in this dialogue. It's exceptionally important because without that, none of you would know what other things you're working on, what other things your community needs. So I encourage you, whenever you hear about a dialogue coming to your area, please sign up. Please come, lend your voice, lend your opinion, lend your support to each other so that you can advocate for the things that you would like to have in your community. So that's through Days of Dialogue. There are cards on each of on the tables. You can hit that, the QR code, or contact us and find out when the next dialogues will be. Thank you, Sharon. And so one other program I want to mention, then I want to pass it over to Ken so I don't take up too much time. One of the other things that I do, I serve as a senior lead mediator for the Los Angeles City Attorney's Dispute Resolution Program. And this program is what we have whenever someone files a complaint against LAPD. Instead of it languishing on a desk somewhere, or you not knowing where it is, or what happened to that officer, or what happened with my complaint, we have a program that allows you to sit with a mediator like myself, with that officer that actually pulled you over, and have a dialogue about what happened. We don't talk about it to change your mind, which is not the importance of dialogue. The importance of dialogue is coming together, sharing where you agree, where you align, and what your differences are, and having a respect for all of it. This program with the city attorney's office allows for that officer to hear from that community member, and vice versa. So oftentimes, we've had officers offer apologies to the community. I didn't know that putting this flashlight in your face was offensive, right? And so we've had instances where that conversation happens. The community member will say, you know what? I was mouthing off. Maybe I shouldn't have said what I said. I called you a racist, but I was just mad. That's the platform where they get a chance to have these conversations and leave with an appreciation for each other, even if they didn't like the way that they encountered each other on that day. If you're interested in that program, please let me know. I'm happy to talk to you more about it and show you ways that you can go through a training program to become a mediator. That's one of the things I love to do, is mentorship and talking to other people who are interested in continuing this work in their community. So encourage you to talk to me about the LAPD training coming up February 6th and 7th. I encourage you to talk to me about the Los Angeles City Attorney's Program, where you can receive your certification for free at no charge, as is the LAPD Community Program. That's also for free. These programs cost upwards of $3,000 to $5,000. You can check it out all over the country with programs that they offer. Kids Managing Conflict. Come to our dialogues. Come see what our kids are learning. Come see how they're putting this into work in their schools. And support us if you can. If you know someone who is looking for a cause, we're happy to meet with them and connect with them and talk with them about what we do. I don't want to take up any more time. I thank you so much for coming here today and just hearing the importance of dialogue and why we have it. It's not to change anyone's mind. It's so that you have a chance to share experiences and develop an understanding, even if you disagree on the issue itself. So thank you so much.
Let's meet. Whoa. Both of ours fell apart here.
Here, you can take mine.
Sorry. Is my mic off?
I came here today thinking that we would talk a lot about dialogue, about the methodologies and the meaning of dialogue. But I was deeply impacted by those plenary sessions that we just sat through. And I'd like to say something about why dialogue has meaning for us in this moment with these circumstances. And I'd like to begin by speaking personally. Many years ago, in the early 1960s, I was a part of the civil rights movement, and I worked in both the North and in the South. And probably the single most impactful experience of my life was working in Southern Alabama, Selma and Montgomery, and some of the counties in Southern Alabama, and also in Albany and Americus in South Georgia. And what I learned there was the power of people acting together. And what I learned was the power of hope and the power of a kind of moral courage that we saw exhibited in the panel a little bit before. And dialogue wasn't really a part of what we were doing at that time. Instead, we were focused on stopping lynching, on the right to use public accommodations, to travel, to go to restaurants, to be able just to walk on a sidewalk without being forced off the sidewalk because you were Black. We were working for the rights of kids to go to school. And what happens in school is obviously incredibly important, and that's why we support kids managing conflicts. But I think we would say that kind of along with what Harry Belafonte said just before he died, which is the great advantage of getting older is that you realize how fragile things are, how easy it is to get pushed back. And from my point of view, we've just been pushed way, way back. But here's the difference. We know it doesn't have to be this way. We know what the strength of combining together, of creating unity is. We know the power of what it is that we believe in. And now the question is, how do we communicate to people who have different views, different perspectives? And here's essentially what we did not really do. We left some people behind. Some folks didn't get on board and have now kind of presented themselves as obstacles in the path to our being able to live better lives with one another. So let's now think for a moment together about what dialogue really is. So there was a wonderful, brilliant physicist in the 20th century. His name was David Bohm, one of the top 20, 30 physicists in the world during that period. And he wrote a book on dialogue. And here's how he defined it. He said, dialogue is the stream of meaning that flows between us. It is a way of communicating meaning from one person to another. And what we have to do fundamentally is figure out how to go out to all those people we left behind and communicate the meaning of what it is that we have been talking about here today. And dialogue is the methodology that allows us to do this. Conflict resolution in general is the methodology that gives us the ability to figure out what's actually taking place beneath the arguments that we are having. Because we all know we get into arguments that are about things that don't actually matter the most to us. And so part of what conflict resolution consists of is just a series of questions. Like, why does that matter so much to you? What does that mean to you? How does that feel? How would you like things to be instead? And now we've got conversations that can take place. So for the last 45 years, I have been a mediator and a dialogue facilitator. And I have facilitated with Dorit Sipis right here, dialogues between Palestinians and Israelis, dialogues independently between Ukrainians and Russians, between Sandinistas and Contras, between supporters of Morgan Tsvangirai and supporters of Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe. In other words, I've done hundreds and hundreds of these mediations and dialogues. The last series were in Athens, dialogues between Greek citizens who didn't want immigration and migrants who had come into Athens. And if you think for a moment about how it is that people can come together and talk to each other, how does that actually take place? Well, here are the two opening questions for the dialogues in Athens, just as an illustration. Opening question 1. Have you, personally, in your life, ever been in a situation in a family or a neighborhood or a school or a workplace where you were the new one and everybody else had been there for a while? How did they treat you? What was it like for you? And now, question 2. Have you ever in your life, in a family or neighborhood or school or workplace, ever been the one who's been there for a while? And now all kinds of new people are coming in. And what did that feel like? And how were you treated? What happened to you? And now we have the beginning of an understanding that everybody can begin to fit into somebody else's shoes. We begin to understand that the human experience is common to all of us. And we now have to figure out how to talk to each other. Here's another one that I've done many times in prejudice reduction, bias awareness sessions. Two people, totally opposite to one another in race, gender, age, sort of background, class, whatever it might happen to be, put them together and ask each of them to tell a story about some time in their life when they were not seen for who they actually were, when they felt discriminated against for any reason, prejudged for any reason. What was it like for them? And now, after you've done that, what do your two stories have in common? And the answer is everything. And so what happens in Zimbabwe, what happened is the supporters of Morgan Tsvangirai were shooting into a house trying to kill supporters of Robert Mugabe and later realized their parents were in that house. And people have this deep understanding of the human truth of what this is. That is what dialogue is. It is human being to human being. And in the session that we had before, people talked about love, about coming from the heart. How do you do that? Well, the answer is you sit down with someone and you ask questions. And when they say something you don't like, try to figure out what it is that that person is actually really trying to say. Like, I'm scared to death here. I don't want to feel like I'm an outsider. Like, I don't understand what's going on. Or whatever it may happen to be. And now we have the beginning of the opening of a conversation. So that's really the essential purpose of dialogue. It is to draw people together and then design questions that can help the group of people figure out how to talk to each other. That's it, basically. Now, having said this, how exactly does that work? And it turns out we have been able to develop techniques that are very powerful and very useful in doing this. And I'd like to give you a sense of what some of those techniques are. So these are some materials, and if you would like these materials, I'm not sure how we get those to people. What do you think? Maybe if there's a sign-up sheet for people who want copies of them. In any event, the materials are yours if you want them. So let's just start with a basic idea, if we can. I don't think this is going to work. Maybe I've got to push these guys. Okay, let's see if I can go back now. No. Okay, so just a couple of quotations. I'm not going to, the first one actually, I'll just describe it because I think it's really nice, by an Indian writer named Krishnamurti. He said, a dialogue is a form of communication in which question and answer continue until a question is left without an answer. Thus, the question is suspended between the two persons involved in the answer in question. And then skipping ahead, it's left essentially untouched by thought. There is a human connection that takes place between those people who have question and answer. And that's fundamentally what we're oriented towards. And then finally, Elie Wiesel, who was in Auschwitz and wrote about his experience in the concentration camps. We are all partners in a quest. The essential questions have no answers. You are my question, and I am yours. And then there is dialogue. The moment we have answers, there is no dialogue. Questions unite people, answers divide them. So why have answers when you can live without them? So that's it. We are their question, and they are ours. And what are we looking for? We're looking to expand the tent. We're looking to draw people in. We're looking to include people in this moral arc of the universe. We're looking to create this community, not by creating a community against others, which is what is taking place. There's no doubt about the fact that they're creating community, but it's a negative community. It's an antagonistic community. It's a community of hate. And in order to succeed, we need to create a larger community, one that welcomes them in and realizes that the problem is not just bad people. It is systems that divide us against one another. So, thank you. If you wouldn't mind skipping ahead and again, and again. Okay, so here are some definitions of various terms. Notice that dialogue is basically designed to increase understanding by exchanging ideas in what we think of as a win-win process. But now if you'll skip forward ahead, where I'm going to, and once more. So there's a fundamental difference between dialogue and monologue. And mostly what we have in politics is what we can call serial monologues. Individual people just saying, here's what I think, and there's no exchange. There's no back and forth. There is no conversation. And what we're looking for is creating an environment in which people are able to come to terms with each other. So dialogue is responsive, talking with each other. It assumes that there are multiple truths. And this, of course, is the fundamental problem with every effort to banish diversity. And here, we'll just ignore that for a moment. There are two fundamental facts about the universe and about human problem solving. The first is really the essential nature of diversity, which is out of our differences come a richer array of options, a richer set of possibilities about what we can experience. So here's a question that has been, it's an experiment that's been done many times. If I were to come in front of you and hold up a glass bowl that was filled with M&Ms and ask you how many M&Ms were in the bowl, do you know what the closest to correct answer almost always is? Anybody know? The average of all of our suggestions combined together. Because some of us will guess high and some will guess low, and the average will always be the closest to correct answer. So what does this mean? This means that if we are engaged, if we are confronting a problem, and the problem is simple, one person can say what the answer ought to be. But if the problem is complex, one person's answer isn't going to work for everybody. And then what you are in is a power-based contest to impose my solution on you or your solution on me, but there is no common solution, and the ability to solve problems and collaborate with one another just disappears. So now, again, if you wouldn't mind, and this is about, again, debate versus dialogue, if you'll skip forward. One more. One more. Here we go. Okay, so here are some varieties of dialogue. This is some places where dialogues can be useful. First of all, in building empathy. We can use, like those questions that I suggested for Athens, dialogue is a wonderful way of building empathy. It is a way of solving problems. We can simply say, what is the problem that we have to address? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And now let's come up with some solutions. Emotional processing. And notice that this is what couples do. It's what families often do. These are dialogues that we engage in all the time, where we are trying to process some set of emotions and get some feedback from people about that offer us a perspective on what we have gone through. Conflict resolution and reconciling with one another. Restorative justice and community building. These happen through dialogue. Relationship and trust building, trauma processing, team building, strategic planning, learning, discovering, exchanging ideas about anything. Strategizing, action planning, evolving, evaluating, and assessing. So notice, dialogue is everywhere. And what we have missed is there are different forms that dialogue will take with each of these different varieties. And what we then want to think about is how do we combine these in ways that are most effective? If you'll skip forward. Why dialogue? And I think here, I want to go to number 2. Dialogue is a place where boundaries are created, acknowledged, respected, and consensually crossed. And every marriage is a consensual boundary violation, okay? Every relationship that we have is coming directly in touch with someone's boundaries and then finding out ways of how we can cross and connect with one another. And at the boundaries, at the borders, are where things not only fall apart, but things come together miraculously. Where chaos happens, and where democracy takes place. So, if we can go ahead. This is a basic idea about the nature of dialogue. And it comes out of conflict resolution. And the basic idea is this. If you are facing a problem, How do you solve it? And can you darken the screen for just a moment? Not dark yet. If you push the period button, I think might do it. Okay. All right, so ignore the chart there for a moment and just think about this. Let's assume we're all in this room here together, and now let's assume there is an air conditioning unit that's on. And let's say that we divide the room in half. This half wants the air conditioning unit on, this half wants it off. How do we solve this problem? Answer, because the air conditioning unit, oh, hi, Avis, how are you? Good to see you. How do we solve this problem of the air conditioning unit?
Dialogue. Dialogue?
Well, dialogue comes last. So the first way we solve it is by power. The biggest, baddest, meanest person in the room wins. Or the one with the most weapons, or the one with the most money, or the one with the highest title, or the one who's the best organizer and can get people on their side. Those are forms of power, okay? But here's the problem. If you exercise power, and let's say this half of the room wins, how do the people over here feel? Not very good. So after a while, if they're losing all the time, they're just going to get up and leave. And now let's imagine everybody on this side is white, and everybody on this side is black, and everybody on this side is male, and everybody on this side is female. And whatever you want to do, as long as you've got those characteristics, if you decide on the basis of power, you automatically create prejudgment, privilege, discrimination, and unfair outcomes, unjust outcomes. So what do? Well, the answer is we create limits on the exercise of power. That's what rights are. That's what laws are. That's what the Constitution of the United States is. That's what the 14th Amendment that we were just talking about. Every word in the Constitution is something that some dictator cannot do. Okay? That's why it's important. It is a limitation on the exercise of power. How do you enforce it? You go to court. And here, of course, we come up with a problem. If you appoint the judges, then you get to determine in advance what's going to happen. So it turns out that in order to have rights, you have to have a certain amount of power. Because without your power, your rights will not be respected. And once again, we're in a win-lose outcome. In power, one side wins, the other loses. If we do it on a rights basis, we say, for example, let's negotiate this, but people over here are more powerful than people over here. So the air conditioning unit is on for 2 hours and it's off for 1 hour. Well, that feels better than having some dictator tell us that it's going to either be on or off, but it still isn't exactly the best. So what's the third option? And the answer is an interest-based option, which is not what do you want, but why do you want it? Oh, wow. And now if we say, why do you want the air conditioning unit on? The answer is because we're stuffy in here. Well, how about if we open the doors? How about if we open a window? How about if we turn on a fan? Well, I want it off because we're freezing. Well, how about if the people over here give the people on this side their coats? What if we bring in a heater? I want it off because I can't hear the speaker, it's too loud. What if I use a microphone? Speak louder. In other words, multiple options open up that do not require a winner and a loser for the first time. No winners, no losers. Exactly. Okay. So now, how does this translate into dialogue? Let me give you 3 categories of questions I can ask everybody in this room right now. 3 categories of questions. Category 1, who is the oldest person in the room? Who's the youngest? Who's the tallest? Who's the shortest? Who lives the closest to City Hall? Who lives the furthest away? And notice that there is a single correct answer for everyone in the room. And those single correct answers naturally form a hierarchy from top to bottom. There's only one oldest and one youngest, or one youngest and one oldest, whichever you put at the top. And so it's along a line. And that means it's one-dimensional. Okay? So now category 2. How old are you? How tall are you? Where do you live? And now there is a single correct answer for each person. Okay, that feels a little bit better. At least you have the ability to step outside the hierarchy. You're no longer on a line, you're on a plane. Okay? And so there's a little bit more freedom of movement when you move in that direction. But here's category 3. What issues are you facing at whatever age you're at? What does your height mean to you? What did it mean to you when you were growing up? What do you love about where you live? What do you not love about where you live? And notice now, multiple correct answers for everyone. The whole idea of a correct answer disappears. There's no such thing anymore. It's just what's real for you, what's true for you. And what issues I'm facing right now, I may be facing completely different issues 5 minutes from now. Does that make my previous answer wrong? No. It just means that that was my answer then and I've moved on. And so what we want to do is to create conversations that do not have a single correct answer. We want to ask questions that do not have a single correct answer. What are these questions? There are a whole series of them. Let me give you a couple of them. Actually, if we can move ahead quite a bit here. Well, we're going to skip over all of this to keep going. Keep going. Okay, we're going to keep going. Keep going. Still more and more and more.
No, we want to hear those.
And more. Okay. Actually, this is worth reading. So before moving on, this is Rebecca Solnit. We were talking about hope earlier. This is a really brilliant statement about hope. Hope is not a lottery ticket. You can sit on the sofa and clutch feeling lucky. It is an axe you break down doors with in an emergency. Hope should shove you out the door because it will take everything you have to steer the future away from endless war, from the annihilation of the earth's treasures and the grinding down of the poor and marginal. To hope is to give yourself to the future, and that commitment to the future is what makes the present inhabitable. Isn't that great? I love that little push out the door. That's what we need, and that's what we got this morning. Okay, if you can move on now. Here we go, the art of asking questions. Okay, next one. All right, we'll actually move on from this one. So there are two real reasons for asking questions. One is to get answers, and the other is to find deeper questions. And those questions themselves are partly answers that lead us to still deeper questions and answers. And what we want to do with those questions is to help people gain insight into their issues, their troubles, their problems, and to gain perspective on what the difficulties are that strengthen their capacity for empathy and humility, and help them figure out how to satisfy their interests. Next one. So next one after this. I did that one. Next one. What I want to focus on here for our purposes is how do we design questions that help people figure out what's actually happening for them. So one question is, who wants to know? Who are you, the questioner, who really wants to know the answer? Who exactly is asking? Why do you want to know? What's driving your curiosity? What's underneath this for you? Why do you care what the answer is? And I love this next one. Is the question dangerous enough? Okay? Because we can play it safe with questions. and just be superficial. But the goal of a really good question is to get just a little bit dangerous. That is, to open the possibility of an unexpected answer. And that's what we're looking for. What question does the other person most, well, I'll put it differently. What question does the other person most want you to ask them? Try this with your spouse. Just say to them, what question would you most like me to ask you right now? See what happens. Okay? What question does the other person least want to answer? What question are you most afraid of being asked right now? What in your life or theirs could change as a result of your answer? What's the meaning of the question? What is the type and quality of energy that is contained within your question? And we can see that quality of energy that came out of those panels that we just came from was beautiful, was really right on the edge of what needed to be said and what we most needed to hear. How much audacity and kindness are represented in the question? Are you willing to ask the same question of yourself? And if you aren't, no one will answer. So you have to be willing to ask the same question of yourself. How prepared are you to be shocked by the answer? And how might you turn the answer into a deeper question? Next one. Now we want to move on to, if you could move on. Here's what to listen for in the answers. What do we listen for? Well, lawyers listen for facts. And the facts are important, but we can also listen for all the rest of this stuff. In everybody's statement, there are emotions. There are modes of perception, roles, intentions, expectations, wishes and dreams, ego defenses, subconscious meanings, offers to negotiate, openings to dialogue, cries for help, and desire for forgiveness. All of this is in the conversations that we are having. But how open are we to hearing that level of depth from people? And the next one. Here are just, I developed this in one of the, 5 minutes, okay. So we'll skip ahead of this. Next, and next one, and next, 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 next, and next. Here we go, okay, so next one, and next one. I wish I could do this, I'm sorry. Next one, next one, next one. Okay, here we go. These are some questions that I developed for a national group that was supporting Democratic Party candidates in the last round of election, different Democratic Party candidates. That is the one before this last election. So, and they were all fine about opposing Trump, but they were disagreeing. Some were supporters of Bernie, some were supporters of Elizabeth, some were supporters of Joe. Some, people had different candidates, as many of us in this room did. So here is the opening question. What principles do you believe the candidate you support stands for? Why are those principles important to you? And now, here's the clincher. The third one. How might you extend those principles and goals to conversations about the future? How could we use those principles to have a better conversation right now? And we can do this in any conversation. You can, if you're having a conversation with someone that isn't working, try this. Turn to them and say, excuse me, is this conversation working for you? Because it's not working for me. And I would like to ask you now, what is one thing I could do that would make this conversation work better for you? And I'd like to try doing that. And now, would you like to hear one thing you could do that would make this conversation work better for me? You just threw a little bomb into the conversation. You blew it up. And that's the goal of this. Now skip forward again, and this is the last part. The back one. Questions for political arguments. I like this first one. What life experiences have you had that have led you to feel so passionately about this issue? That's not a lecture, that's a life history. So now if you can turn it off completely, here's the goal. Nobody knows where any conversation is going to end. We have no idea. But what we want to do is to create space within every conversation for the real human being who is in front of us to be there with us. And that space we create inside ourselves. There was a man, a poet, who wrote in the 1920s, 1930s, and his name was Edwin Markham, and here was the poem that he wrote. They drew a circle that kept me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But wit and I had the will to win. We drew a circle that brought them in. That's what dialogue is. It's a circle that brings them in. That's what we need to do. And that's the connection between those panels that we heard earlier and the techniques that we are talking about. We need to make sure that whatever happens, dialogue is a part of this, that there is room within our conversation for alternative perspectives. And what we discover is most of the arguments that we have about politics are very superficial and aren't about politics at all. They're about fear. They're about desire. They're about feeling left out. They're about hope. They're about what we want for the future. Those are conversations we can have. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Now you all know why we were talking so fast. We wanted to get as much time as possible. I just want to, first of all, before I introduce the team from Calibrate, you guys heard a lot about Days of Dialogue, a lot about kids managing conflict. You're going to learn a little bit about Calibrate right now too, because we're going to do a healing circle, which I think everyone needs in light of what's going on right now. I appreciate, again, that you all stayed back after such a long morning and are still here having these conversations because they're difficult, and I know you're sparing your Saturday for us, so we appreciate it. Without further ado, I'm going to turn. Okay, sorry, Cheryl has some. All right, let's get going because I want to have you some of your Saturday back to you. But before we close out, I want to introduce the team from Calibrate. I'm going to play a couple videos from them really quick, and then we're going to do a healing circle, which I think everybody probably needs before we leave. So, Marcy, Van, Alana, I don't know if you guys want to come up. Okay, you got it.
The sitting in a circle and talking about your life's issues is one of the things that when kids come back for 10-year reunions, 20-year reunions, 30, now 40-year reunions at Crossroads, they say one of the best things you ever did for us was give us counsel, give us that circle where we could talk about the things that were most important in our lives.
And it grew out of the expressed needs of the community. People who said, we needed this. It was important to me. It worked. We want to pass this on because it worked for me.
I realized connections was so important at Community Harvest because Black people in North America, we're in pain. We have generational trauma. And even though we live okay and we have nice cars, there is something that we have lived in a country that really terrorized us. And you pass it on. And you pass it on. And so it just gave us an opportunity to begin to heal those issues that we have in our community yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It's still there. I don't know what the solution is, but I do know that at a school, in any school where there are a number of Black students, connections is absolutely necessary.
That'll wake it up. And I feel weird being on the mic. He's speaking to the mic. Am I back? Okay. So the first video that you saw that had, too loud? Okay, my cousin is in the back. The first video that you saw with Paul Cummins, David Bryan, and Charlotta Johnson, those were my mentors. I was a teacher in their schools. My colleague Van also taught. Van, come on up here. I'm going to hand it right over to Van. I also want to say those 125 facilitators that we've trained this new generation work with 2,000 people in Los Angeles and under-resourced communities, K through adult, and we're super proud of them, and Alana's one of them. She'll come up next.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I am Marcos Van with Calibrate. I am the connection specialist for Calibrate, which means I facilitate circles as well as train future facilitators for Calibrate. I was trained in 2003 when it was my first year at Community Harvest, where I was a math teacher, and I fell in love with the process. I've gone through different trainings, four circles that are all some level of similar, and happy to be here today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alana. So while these two are from that first wave of being in schools and being trained much early on, I was one of the alum of Connections and then was able to then have the opportunity to learn how to be a facilitator and bring this out to my community. Nice to meet you all.
So what you're going to experience is not exactly Connections, but the Heal LA are free open sessions for the public to come and join us and actually get a full experience. But we're just going to give you a little taste today so that you can take something home with you.
Okay, so what I'd like to ask first is that we fill in for tables that don't have that many people to fill in so that we have as complete circles as we can at a few different tables. So those back there and back there, if you could just fill in. Okay. So on your tables, you see some placards that have different things written on them. Those are our agreements and intentions. Our 4 agreements are more like the rules for how our circles are conducted. So they are first to unplug. So if you have a phone or any kind of electronic devices, please make sure it's on D&D because we'll need to be able to hear each other at the tables. Stories stay here. So whatever's shared in these circles where you are between the people who are in the circles. So you may not repeat what somebody shares outside of the circle today. Respect the talking piece. In the center of your tables, you see different little objects. Those are what we call talking pieces. So when someone is holding a talking piece, it is that person's turn to share and no one else's. And remain in the circle. So once we get this process started, which is now, we're asking that you remain for the duration of the process. I promise it'll be relatively painless and it should be kind of quick so that we can all get to lunch. Now we have 4 intentions. Our intentions are the things that we ask you exercise and aspire toward as you participate in the circle in order to bring your highest self to the circle. So they are, listen from the heart. So you're listening without judgment, without interruption, without questions. Whatever someone's sharing is their truth, and they're allowed to give their truth as they see fit. Speak from the heart. Speak from the heart simply means share whatever comes to mind when you are responding to a prompt. Include what you would like to include. Don't include what you don't want to include. Keep it lean. Be mindful that there are several people at your table or in your circle, and we're going to make sure everyone has an opportunity to share. So please say whatever it is you want to say, and be sure to pass it to the next person. And be spontaneous. So in the spirit of listening from the heart, we often, here in America, we always think about what we want to say typically before we say it. To avoid embarrassment, or for like students, they don't want to look stupid in class in front of other students. We're asking that you actually do it a little differently. So when you're listening from the heart, you're not thinking about what it is you want to share. If you find yourself wandering off thinking about what your response might be, just remind yourself that you should be listening from the heart. So now I'm going to give us a moment to think about the 4 intentions and which intention you personally would like to focus on for yourself. They are listen from the heart, speak from the heart, keep it lean, and be spontaneous. So you're thinking about which one of those might be a bit difficult for you, because when you talk a lot. So you might want to remind yourself to keep it lean. That's one of the ones that I try to focus on sometimes, depending on time constraints. So you're thinking about those 4 intentions and which one you want to focus on personally. Listen from the heart, speak from the heart, keep it lean, or be spontaneous. And we're going to do what's called a 4, 5, 6 breath. That means on the count of 3, I'm going to ask you to inhale deeply for a count of 4. Then you're going to hold for 5, and you're going to slowly release for 6 seconds. While you're doing this, I'm asking that you breathe in the intention that you want to focus on the most. Make sure you're comfortable. Make sure you have your intention selected. And 1, 2, 3, in. Hold. And release. We'll do this one more time. 1, 2, 3, in. Hold. And release. So we're going to introduce you to a process shortly. Making sure that you understand the talking pieces. So once again, you have talking pieces in the center of your circle. When it's someone's turn to share, they will hold one of the talking pieces, and then it'll be passed clockwise or just to the person on your left.
You'll find them. They are the little plushies or wands or other items that are on the table. And so those will be the talking pieces. As for connections, as we said, this is not a full connections, but we do always try to start our time with a significant activity or motion to signal that we are starting our time where we are working towards these intentions and following through on these agreements. So for today's opening, we're going to try to group clap. So we won't be counting, but instead we'll be looking at each other as a large group, and then we will all try to simultaneously clap. Does everyone want to try? So you can get your hands out like you're getting ready to clap, and we are going to try our best to read the room and clap together without counting. Ready, everyone? Not too bad, not too bad. That's impressive for a large group at different tables. Very nice. So that is our opening for today. And again, that's just to signify that we are working towards those intentions and holding up those agreements that Van had mentioned. So while we normally hold connections, we typically would have 1 to 2 facilitators in each circle to help dictate and move through, time and what prompts you will get through. Because we're only giving you a little preview of connections, we won't have a facilitator at your circle. Instead, I will be helping you with timekeeping. So we'll have 2 sections of 10 minutes each, and I will be on the mic giving you direction as to how fast and quickly that time is passing and how much time you have remaining. As an example, after Van gives a prompt, I will then come back on the mic to let you know that a minute has passed and you can start to transition to the next. I'll let you know the halfway point, and I'll let you know when there is 1 minute left. So that way your group can see your timing in regards to it. If your group happens to finish early, we ask that you simply keep to the intentions and agreements and remain respectful to the other circles by just keeping your volume to a minimum, so then that way they can complete out the rounds. And with that being said, I will pass it to you, Van.
All right, so for the first section, there's going to be 3 rounds. This will take approximately 10 minutes. So you keep that in mind as you're answering the prompts that will be delivered and listening to those who are sharing. So there are 3 sections or 3 prompts. The first is for you to think about the fact that we all come here today with some values that we hold dear, and that's what brought us here. That's why we're here together for this conference and this summit together. So I want you to think about one of those core values that you grew up with that means something to you. That's round 1. You're going to state that value in 1 to 5 words. For example, mine would be compassion. You're not giving any description. You're just going to state the value that means something to you, that you grew up with, that you bring forth and put out into the world or demonstrate regularly. The second round is you telling us or sharing at your table who instilled that value in you. So who did that value come from? So who demonstrated that value to you? And you'll just say your relationship with that person. For instance, mine would be my father, Charles Van. So round 1 is you saying the value that you hold dear. Round 2 is you stating who instilled that value in you or demonstrated it to you. And round 3, you're going to give a story about that person exhibiting that value. That's the one that will take a little longer. So the first 2 rounds are pretty quick, about a minute each. And then after that, you'll have about 7 to 8 minutes total to share a story about that person displaying that value. Once again, round 1 is the value, simply stated, no explanation. Round 2 is the person who instilled that value in you. Round 3 is a story about that person demonstrating that value. Anyone can begin. So to begin, you'll simply grab one of the talking pieces in the center. You'll begin sharing, and then you'll pass that talking piece to the person on your left. Friendly reminder, no crosstalk. So you're simply listening from the heart when it's someone else's turn, and you're waiting until it is your turn to actually speak. And we're going to begin in 3, 2, 1.